Welcome, petals. If your life revolves around flowers, this is the podcast for you.
You've got to manipulate the environmental
Environment.
conditions. Your watering or airflow, dare say, will be a big part of solving your problems.
Before we dive in, we welcome Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers as our Season 3 sponsor. Blooming in New Zealand since 1992, they're a vibrant modern wholesale business, bringing premium hand-selected blooms to florists and retailers nationwide. Good morning and welcome to Flower Farming in New Zealand. Today I have a really great guest on board, and my guest is Bruce Thurlow from the Otago Polytechnic Cromwell campus. Quite a mouthful, Bruce, but welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Very good, Joe. Good to be with you.
Good. So tell us a little bit about your history and how you got there, because you're not a flower farmer, are you? I don't think, as far as I know, you've never been a flower farmer.
No,
it could be in your future, but it's not in your...
Oh, sounds like a lovely career change. Well, I guess the short version would be, I guess I had a whole life and then I was in my early 40s and I'd been, I guess, for want of a better word, gardening and growing food for myself at home and was interested, and I had a mother who worked at Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne for 20 odd years in the herbarium library, but she was an avid plants person. So I grew up with these sort of values, and then I got to my early 40s and someone said to me, "Oh, you're always growing food. You should actually do that for a living." Seemed like a really odd thing to someone to say, but it resonated deeply and I completely changed careers. I used to be an online marketing manager. And so I started studying at Otago Polytechnic in Cromwell. And that was in 2015. And I thought, I'll do a year and then I'll get a job. It'll give me the confidence and, fill in all the gaps. And I ended up doing 2 years and did the diploma year.
Sorry, diploma in...
Horticulture. Yeah, it was slightly different back then, the names and everything. So it was just a 2-year horticulture. I was there for 2 years, and then I'd been working my holidays up at Araha Wellness Retreat in their gardens, which were amazing. And I did sort of 2 summers there. And then I got a job in the second year, 3 days a week at Sherwood Kitchen Garden in Queenstown, growing food for the kitchen, which is what I always aspired to because I was deeply invested at that time in growing food, and was there for a number of years, and then worked at Rawburn for a bit, and then the Hills Golf Course and set up a big kitchen garden there, and then was asked to apply for a job as horticulture lecturer at Otago Polytechnic. And
Wow.
sort of second time. Yeah, and then sort of I'd turned them down previously actually, and timing wasn't quite right. And kind of pleased I did. And then very luckily, opportunity came up again and I applied and got the job there. So I've been at Otago Polytechnic for 2 years now. So this has been my third year. Just started, students back last week.
And you are lecturing in horticulture or just one part of the program, or
across level 3 and 4. And I also coordinate a online horticulture program with about 100 students studying online as well. So there's in-person classes, and then the online class is more of a coordination of all those students.
I know we didn't plan to talk about this, but because we're talking about the Polytech, would you like to mention what's covered in the horticulture course and things? I think people need to know what's available.
Sure, and I think it's relevant. I guess there's many different pathways in. You don't have to be just coming to do a year-long course, let's say, to get a qualification. We have, especially viewers and listeners to this podcast, will be interested that one of the classes I teach is a Thursday propagation class. So every Thursday, students come in. This year, 5 students, maybe 6. We only started yesterday. But you'd come in every Thursday and learn and be with the other students doing the full year course, let's say, and learn seed sowing, cuttings, literally how to run a nursery, because the students do all the work. And many people might have come to our giant plant sale at Labor Day weekend. Certainly many people in Central Otago know of it. And all those plants are grown and propagated by the students on their Thursdays. And then Catherine, our nursery manager, does a huge amount of work outside of that Thursday, but the bulk of the work is done by the students. So that Thursday propagation class is paid to come in. You don't have to do a qualification. We'll give you a lovely certificate at the end, but you fill out the same workbooks as the other students. So you record all the propagation that you do. And I dare say you can propagate your own personal projects. I think it's just a wonderful experience. We've had great feedback on it. Yeah, it's not an onerous commitment. So that's one way people can come in outside of doing what's called level 3 nursery production, and that's plant science, nursery plant care, propagation, communication. And so that's a 75 credit course. And you can combine that with fruit production, which includes soils and seasonal tasks, orchard canopy management. And so we have a semi-commercial orchard, cherry orchard, pip fruit and stone fruit orchards, and a vineyard on campus. So this is quite rare in the whole of New Zealand to have the scale of what we have. So amazing facilities, and a second lecturer who looks after most of the level 4. I also teach level 4 weeds and communication as well. So it crosses across both parts. We're not stuck in one sort of silo. And for fruit production, because they want to work in a cherry orchard, for example, or a viticulture stream. A lot of ways they can talk to us, and I know it might sound a bit confusing, but that's the story.
So to get on to what we are planning to talk about today, and you were talking about how the Polytech has fantastic infrastructure. One of your skills is growing in glass houses. Now, do you want to talk about what glass houses you teach people in now?
Well, let's talk about the Polytech, because that kind of sets up the basics. And what we have is a range of greenhouses, and I know you can put on screen perhaps at a later stage, and I'll sort of talk to them in my head. So we have a mist house or a mist shed, and that's where we take our seeds that we've sown, and we have or cuttings, and that has like heated tables, a fine misting spray, a really good irrigation system with what we call, I forget the correct name, we call it the leaf, where it sort of dries out and the irrigation will turn on just for a very short period with a fine misting spray, and then turn off again. It won't be on for a minute, for a matter of seconds. It's way better than having just a home timer that will set 4 times a day for a minute. And that's quite critical, I think, in that environment. The heated table, it's like a copper coil going through these benches with a special stone grit. People might know of those. And concrete floors in there, so you get the heat sink happening there. But it's only a single skin greenhouse. We're in Cromwell, and we do have lights in that mist house as well.
Do you? So you find you need them?
We put them in winter.
I don't use lights.
Yeah, we only put them in winter just to keep everything growing a little bit more. Because what we're trying to do, I guess, is manipulate all those things, because that's what all greenhouses are doing, is trying to manipulate the environment to get the fastest or best possible growth.
I expect that that's necessary for you because you're aiming your plant sales for the Labour Weekend sale, aren't you? So you're growing to a timetable, which is very similar to flower farmers. We plan our fields for rotations and things, so all our crops are planned and timed so that they follow in succession or whatever. I just don't use lights to do it because I don't have to have everything flowering or ready to sell by October.
So everyone's context is going to be different. And certainly, yes, we build towards an autumn sale as well, but it's sort of smaller. Yes, everything's leading towards October. So then I guess from the mist house, we have a hardening house, which has sort of roll-up sides, better airflow, also a concrete floor, but we leave that open just to harden off the plants and toughen them up. So we use that in sort of autumn and spring when it's warm enough. So that gets really full at that time. So it's sort of an intermediate sort of environment.
Can we go back a step? Because you said there's the propagation house and there's the hardening off house. The propagation house, you said, is single skin plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it has no ventilation.
It has ventilation. It has a roof vent.
And do you run fans in there as well?
No, not in the mist shed. We can open one double door at one end on the leeward side of the main northwesterly wind.
Okay, so it's a lot more humid than the hardening off area.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much so. And
you know what level of humidity it would be?
You know what? We don't even bother
measure it.
No.
And you'd be able to tell walking in anyway.
We're in there so often, and I guess as active observation, if you can't tell things aren't going well, that you would
fail.
No humidity meter is going to tell you, just tell you, that was really hot and all your plants have got some fungal infection. So the watering regime is really critical. Obviously, we leave the doors open this time of year. It can get too hot this time of year. So we don't do cuttings, for example, until sometime in March. So yesterday we were only doing seed sowing. Our summers are too hot now, we've found. We used to do cuttings early, but we don't anymore for that very reason. So I mention those things because no greenhouse is perfect. I'm sure the perfect one may exist somewhere, but it is very difficult. And we're no different to everyone else in terms of the things that aren't quite right that we would love to have. Yes, we could monitor the temperature and the humidity and really try and go techie on it. But I
Mm.
think you don't really need to, or you could worry about it and do things like that. We have problems where the slab that was poured for our mist house doesn't have a slope on it, unfortunately, for some
The water
out of our
sits.
control thing. So we do get pooling water, which is a
Yeah.
huge problem just for health and safety level and for algal buildup. So that's no different to anyone else's where great plans didn't go quite right.
But that's a really good lesson, because if you become dependent on the electronics telling you what's wrong with your plants, you're not doing the visual checks that you should probably be doing, and then you're not really learning and observing in the same way.
Correct. So one of the things in our propagation class where we're in the nursery environment, the first thing we do every Thursday is walk around all the greenhouses where we've got plants in our retail areas and not for sale areas. The point of the walk around is not just go, oh, look at the lovely flowers. You're actively observing, looking for pests and diseases, spilling water, is it too wet, etc. So that is a really good practice everyone should be doing in orchards, vineyards, etc. That time is well spent. And the more you do it, the more you see. A little bit of education will help you understand what you're actually seeing, because looking and understanding what you're seeing is two huge different things. And I guess that's what we're teaching as part of the
Yeah.
education as we go.
Yes. So it's looking, understanding, and then knowing how to solve the issue are the three
Yes,
steps, really, aren't they? And that's
that's right.
all kinds of growing, not just greenhouses.
That's correct. Any growing, and once you understand, oh, there's something happening there, it's about making the right decision at the right time. Sounds like life, really, but that is what you are actually doing, and you need to do, because you leave it another week and your aphid infestation is gone
Off the
bonkers
charts.
versus
Yeah.
off the charts. Everything happens very quickly at different times of the year.
I know we're going to get to the big house, but just because you mentioned aphids, do you use integrated pest management within the system?
Up to the point of bringing in beneficial
Mm.
insects, yes.
Yeah.
In terms of physical and cultural practices, for our aphids, we spray with pyrethrum, and I guess cultural practices, we don't propagate a lot of plants that are problematic. We don't keep plants in there for too long that we know are issues. Like, we've introduced a hydroponics tower for the students, which sits in our large greenhouse, and that is an aphid trap for some of the lettuce species if we leave them too long, or particular varieties of things that we might want to grow in there.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, we manage that with pyrethrum, but we also are moving things as fast as possible into different environments. Aphids,
Mm.
once they get into the hardening house, calm down a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're very, very conscious of it. We
Yeah.
know what we know, I guess, at this point.
Yeah. It's just really interesting, because for a lot of flower farmers, they will start their seeds and grow their crops in the same tunnel. So they don't have that opportunity to move things out in the same way that you do. So for
Yes.
us, we use integrated pest management and bring in lacewings and ladybirds, but it's
Yeah.
not always successful for us. And I think growers need to realize that, because there's a couple of reasons, and I'll just touch on them just so people can think about this. One is that when we've got a problem, we're weeks behind people in the North Island who have the same problem. So it's actually quite hard for us to get the beneficials that we want. Secondly, if our temperatures change drastically after we bring in the beneficials, we can lose them all, which is what happened this last year. We had a really cold spell in November and again in December, and our poor
Yes.
beneficials in the hothouse just wasn't warm enough for them, and it decreased the populations drastically.
Yes, and this is very true, and we always get these questions from the students. Why don't we have other plants in there? But you've got to feed your. Let's say you've got parasitoid wasps, for example.
Mm.
The wasps need aphids year round to eat,
Yeah.
or
Yes.
bugs to eat. So the
Yeah.
best example I can give, when I was working at Araha, but after my friend up there, Sarah Cannon, who was working at the moment, introduced parasitoid wasps into one of their greenhouses where they've got a lot of perennial plants that they show off. But they need to now keep aphids in there all the time at a low level to feed their wasps. And people forget that
Yeah.
factor.
Yeah.
Otherwise, all your beneficials are going to eat everything and then leave to find food.
Believe.
So, yeah, Sue, the garden manager, and yeah, they were actively breeding them on a plant, which was really interesting to actually see. And that's probably the best of place. But it's difficult, not impossible. And
Yeah.
yeah, we should be not spraying things because you end up having to keep spraying and keep
Yeah.
killing everything effectively. But again, it's your context that's important.
Yeah, and from a flower farmer's point of view, if you spray with something, I have struggled with this since we had to spray when we were exporting peonies. So, and that's why we stopped. The first thing people do when you give them flowers is put their face in them because they smell flowers, which is what people do, whether they've got a scent or not. So they pick up the bouquet that you've given them or your bunch of, and they put them to your face. And if you've sprayed that, I am so uncomfortable with that, having seen that. And the last person I was interviewing on the podcast worked in a nursery and he got chemical poisoning. So it just makes you so aware
Yes.
of trying to stay away from it. It's not always possible to save a crop, but just being aware. And again, that your visual walk around on a Thursday is a perfect way of finding out what those problems actually are.
That's right. And I will say, because this one continually comes up, pyrethrum and neem are considered organic, BioGrow approved, but organic product does not mean safe and harmless
Thank you.
to the human.
Thank you.
And people need to remember this constantly. Yes. So again, decisions that you have to make within your context.
But informed decisions.
Informed decisions, yes. I'm certainly not advocating synthetics. I think you should always go organic if you can. But again, if you're exporting peonies,
No, we're not anymore for that very reason. Fresh cut flower wholesalers believe wholesaling should never be old school or predictable. Driven by passion and a genuine heart for the craft, the team brings a modern energy to everything they do. By curating top quality flowers and tracking seasonal trends, they provide a fresh vision to the industry. Whether you're a grower looking for a trusted channel, a retailer filling your shelves, or a wedding florist crafting the unforgettable, Fresh Cut is the partner who understands the art and the business. There's excitement ahead with big ideas blooming. Fresh Cut, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. So we've been into the seedling tunnel, single skin plastic, some ventilation, then to the hardening off, which has a lot more ventilation. Yeah, and it has a different irrigation system in there.
It will, yes. It's not the fine mist anymore.
Yeah.
And normally the plants obviously are out of seedling trays and they'll be in 10 centimetre pots or 1.5 litre pots, growing, pricked out and potted up. So it's just a normal irrigation system that might, depending on the time of the year and the heat, and we monitor it a lot, turning on once a day or once every 2 days, the normal overhead spray system.
And then from there you move to what's next?
Well, here's where it gets not complicated, but the art of the nursery, I would suggest. So in, let's say, autumn, we will move things to the hardening house because it's still warm enough from the mist house. But let's say we're doing a cutting going into late April, May, for example, we will go straight into our large greenhouse from the mist shed, and that will act as our hardening house because that environment's warmer.
Can you describe the greenhouse then? Because it's different from the two tunnels we've talked about so far.
We're lucky to have a huge greenhouse with a big concrete slab, and that's glass and has automated venting. It has fans inside that'll turn on at 20 degrees.
See, that's my dream greenhouse.
Yeah.
Automatic venting and fans and okay.
Yeah. We also have shade and thermal curtaining on the ceiling, which we can use at different times. But obviously we're a teaching facility, so we're only really using it when the students are back and we're propagating. But what it allows us to do is move all our plants into this greenhouse for winter, and they will continue to grow. So especially when it starts warming up in early spring, we get really rapid growth. We haven't been in some sort of dormancy, or they're not sitting outside waiting for a fickle spring to start, which really gets a jump on the spring. And then obviously we're leading up to our sale. And yeah, it's a great facility to have. Students get a completely different experience in there, seeing that third option. It just happens to be big. It could be a similar type facility someone else would have. But again, a slight modification, manipulation of the environment based on our climate changes things a lot. We have a shade house outside as well. And we do cold stratification of seeds, and we can show that process. And some plants, that's how you would propagate them. It's just leave the seeds out and that's what you need. So again, that's another environment that will work well. And it's about having the right plant in the right environment at the right time is what would be my principle that we teach. Because some things don't need to be like that glass house, you would.
Or even need a tunnel house,
or
some
even
of these.
Need a tunnel house. Yeah. You don't need all the facilities we have. I dare say if you're trying to have a giant plant sale, it helps a lot, I would suggest.
Yeah, as Bruce says, you do not need all of the infrastructure. You need to understand the right place, the right plant, the right timing. And that is what helps you. Having the tunnels certainly is beneficial. And even if it is for propagation, which for us seed starting and cuttings are probably the biggest thing. Are you happy to talk about your heat bench? Did you create that yourself?
So it's actually really, really old. Does give us a bit of grief with the tech is old. We're terrified of it breaking because of the cost of replacing it. But I do believe in the future, I was thinking about it, worst case, our one broke. There are companies where you can get heat mats, but in custom large sizes, because the ones you just see advertised a lot of the time are quite small. Because really you need to do the entire table.
They're a couple of $100 each. Like $350 for a 1 metre by 60 centimetres, I think. And then you need the controllers because, or you buy the more expensive one that's got the controllers built in.
I would buy the more expensive one rather than just having a one temperature, because it'll get too hot, I think. You need to have a thermostat on that, ideally. Yeah.
For those who need to know, a good source for those temperature controllers or the heat mats is Inkbird. And they do quite a lot of sensors and gauges and things like that, and we just find them invaluable. And it Wi-Fi's to your phone so that you can read your data from wherever you are. If you're not on site, it's quite useful. It's great for people who don't work full-time on their property. They can actually know what to panic about rather than just panicking anyway in case it's not working.
Right. The tech is very accessible now, and like you say, on your phone is fantastic. We have the same thing with our irrigation system. Catherine can either access it via a computer or via her phone, Wi-Fi enabled. And sometimes is big weather events, especially for our outdoor watering. That's really important because overwatering is normally the curse of greenhouses, and people usually love their plants to death. Too much water in greenhouses is probably the best starting point for all your pests and diseases in fairness. Everything
Absolutely.
Warm, moist environments. It's a breeding ground, right? So if anything, you want to be erring on the underwatering side of things.
Yeah, okay.
Might add a third thing that I would love to have. It's on my radar, which we don't have, but I think certainly flower growers would be interested in getting is, in your perspective, is germination chambers, because that is what I would like to have set up. And there's a whole array, and people make them out of old fridges and things.
That's
and
what we've done.
Specialists, but that's what you've done. Yeah, we don't have that at the moment. But I have to convince Catherine where we can put one. And
I'll convince Catherine. I think she's seen ours anyway, I think. But it's an upright freezer, right?
Yes.
So it's got two sides to it. We've drilled some holes through the panel in the middle for air ventilation over both. And one side, there's a heat mat, and it has an ice cream tub of water sitting in it to increase the humidity. And because it's double-sided, I can open both. I can fit my trays in it. That's the thing you have to think about. Get the freezer that fits your trays. We got the freezer for free. Someone was throwing out a freezer that didn't work. So, it's just, it doesn't have to cost the earth.
Catherine and I will have to come and have a look at yours, and we'll
have a visit. Yeah, make sure you measure your trays, because that's the most. Right. I've got one set of trays that don't fit in there, and it's so annoying. I've got to remember, don't sow those seeds in those trays if they're going in the germination chamber. It just doesn't work. I will say I was surprised how little insulation there is actually around the outside of the freezer. The temperature can drop and can change quite dramatically. So that's just something to be aware of. And in a purpose-built germination chamber, I'm sure they would have another layer of insulation around them. So we've talked about water, we've talked about light, we've talked about ventilation. Are those the most important things when you're growing in an
Mhm.
enclosed environment, let's say, whatever it might be? Or
Mhm.
should you also be considering your growing media and your fertilizers? Should they be different from any other type of growing?
I would say watering and airflow are the two biggest issues that you need to understand and control. I often see, and we'll talk about a greenhouse where I work elsewhere, when people buy a tunnel, I think people often only buy one door because the other door is going to be expensive. And then they won't buy the double doors with the wind mesh or whatever it is, the
Mm,
screening
mm,
door, because that's expensive again.
yeah,
They'll buy one vent and they won't buy the extra vent because it's more expensive. They won't buy the automated opener and closer. So you can never have enough ventilation.
correct.
People have never worked in a greenhouse before. The problem is not warming your greenhouse up, it's cooling it down is your
Yes,
problem that you'll face. That is the fundamental of a greenhouse is the airflow and cooling. So I dare say you'll invest in a shade cloth over the top of a greenhouse as well, so it doesn't get too hot. Like a 30% solar
blue
reduction
swerve, yeah.
is what I would suggest doing, especially if you're propagating in it. Yeah, and again, watering. I was mentioning system. If you water too hard or too regularly, that's where you'll get all your fungal problems, fungus gnats. Love those environments. What we do in the summer in pests and diseases in that our large glass greenhouse is we close it right up and because we don't have plants in there in the peak of summer, we solarize it and we heat it up
Yeah.
so much that we aim to kill through heat. And then we can do a deep clean regime through it. So hygiene, airflow and water, and then general cultural practices, let's call it,
Yeah.
of sweeping up, spilt potting mixes if you had a solid floor, weed control, etc. All those environments that pests and diseases can carry over to the next year. This is a huge factor. If you don't understand the life cycles of pests, it's all about these environments under the rims of your pots. We soak
Yep.
our seed trays, we wash them first outside, get any excess grit off, and then we put them in the sink and a little bit of bleach and soak them overnight. So that'll kill the fungal and bacterial pathogens. So you're not carrying it in when you reuse
Okay.
that tray. You can probably get away with it 90% of the time just by washing off. But sensitive plants, you only need one outbreak and you've wasted your time. So it's just good practices to do the same thing all the time for everything and keep the same high standard. So those are cultural and physical practices. Sweeping up constantly is important.
And what about cleaning your tunnel houses, actually washing the plastic skins? Do you just use a soft detergent or do
Soft
you,
detergent is fine, yeah.
and a brush or a mop or a cloth, or there's so many different ways of doing it?
Well, I guess and we're talking about integrated pest management control. We have spiders in our large greenhouse, and I'm a little bit torn whether to kill the spiders. But
Yeah.
we also have redbacks, and we have students, so we have
Yeah.
that to
Yeah.
deal
You
with.
don't have an option.
We
Yeah.
don't have an option. So this is context, I
Mm.
guess, and what you've got. As a rule, yes, you should get rid of them. Have we had problems by not being as vigorous with the cleaning regime? No, we haven't as yet. Should we? Maybe. Are we moving things fast enough through our greenhouses because of our context? Where we're moving them out fast enough, we mitigate any issues. So we might have things. We have black vine weevil, for example, affecting some of
Yeah. God,
our
that's
pods.
annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do read in some places it can turn into an infestation. We get it every year on Prunus lusitanica, Portuguese laurel. Seems to love those. And every year, we propagate a few. I hate that plant. In fairness, we can talk about my hatred of it. Black vine weevils love Prunus lusitanica roots.
They love
Um,
grapevine roots too.
do they as well? Okay, so we always get like one or two plants. We haven't had an infestation of them, and you can see it sort of dying. Maybe it's our colder climates doesn't allow
Mm.
them to prosper as much versus people further north, and for that reason, we're perhaps a little bit lucky in central Otago. But our winters are warming up, so you're going to get more things overwintering. People might have noticed wasps and things like that getting worse and worse down south. So the more you can open up to the cold and the heat, and start breaking life cycles. There's a pest and disease triangle that we teach, which anyone can, if people just look up pest disease triangle. So you have the presence of a pest or a disease, one apex of the triangle. You have the host, for example, our Portuguese laurels. So you have black vine weevil, Portuguese laurel, another corner. And then the only thing you can really change is the environmental conditions. So that's
Which is your third corner of your triangle.
it's a third corner. So a triangle, as people know, if you take away one corner, the whole triangle will collapse. This is very basic, and it sounds simple, but it's not actually as easy as it sounds. But really, you've got to manipulate the environmental conditions. Your watering or airflow, dare say, will be a big part of solving your problems. Then, in our context, we've got greenhouses. You're either going to spray, you're going to end up bringing in beneficial insects and try and get a balanced system if you're going to go down that path of beneficials, and it might take some time to get into a balanced environment. That'll be very hard when you're trying to make money from your business and you're getting ravaged by some pest.
Yeah.
You got to reach for a spray of some sort as fast as possible, I would have thought. That's horticulture, isn't it? Like you work all year setting everything up, and then
something wipes it out.
Something wipes it out. Yeah, hard to know.
The actual skin of the tunnels are plastic, and you do just wash them inside and out because you've got concrete floors as well. I just think maybe as growers, we're so busy growing and planting, we don't think so much about the hygiene. And I think your point that it's such a vital part of the growing environment, we need to think about it more. So inside and out, and then the floors and your trays, it's everything. What about your old potting mix? If you've got old potting mix, do you use it in your tunnels, or that goes into the garden environment? Yeah.
We don't. We take it to areas we've got natives planted outside. All our weeds, we compost and move it to our orchard, and we don't keep that around. It's too much of a risk, I think, to keep reusing seed raising mix. It might seem like a good idea to save money, but if you can avoid it, you should. Can you get away with it? Probably, but I wouldn't. We don't recommend it. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's really good advice, and it's all things that we need to think about. This will be such a specific answer to Central Otago that it may not be of use to anybody. But what do you use as your growing mix within the tunnels? And is there a reason why you've chosen that mix?
So for our seed raising mix, we use a 50-50 mix. So what we call our standard potting mix, and I can talk about that in a second. So 50% standard potting mix and 50% pumice. And the pumice will give that air and water infiltration.
Yep.
And our standard potting mix we get from Canterbury Landscaping to a recipe that has a slow release fertilizer, because we then plants out and put them into the same standard 100% potting mix. For our cuttings, we do 70% pumice and 30% potting mix.
I don't do a lot of cutting, so it's not something I've got any experience with, but that's really interesting that it's 70% pumice.
Yeah.
That's like creating a gravel bed for your plants to grow in, and almost hydroponic in a way, isn't it?
Absolutely, because with cuttings, we talk about that, it's a fight between root growth and rotting. So all the energy that you need is embedded in the cutting, and really you're just trying to get it to the root stage. Yes, once the roots come out, they'll be seeking out further nutrients and popping out the bottom of the trays, but you're moving them on relatively quickly, depending what type of the cuttings are. And the same with the seed raising mix. All the energy is in the actual seed to germinate, and then depending on what you're growing and how long you're in the seed tray, it's probably only a month, maybe maximum, and then you're moving them on. So there's more than enough nutrient in that 50-50 mix for the seed raising.
That's fascinating information.
For hardwood cuttings, we use 100% perlite, I will say, as well.
Wow. And do you make sure the humidity is even higher?
No.
Gosh. Okay.
We don't seem to have any, touch wood, too many issues. The mist house is going to create a humidity, but Central Otago is very dry.
Yeah.
I certainly appreciate that. Hence, we don't do cuttings in the middle of summer. We're selective of the times. We have certainly a regime of when we're doing semi-hardwoods, softwoods, etc. I mean, that's dictated by when things are growing, but everything grows.
Yeah, it comes back to what you've been saying. It's the time, the place, and the plant. You have to understand the plant to know what the right time is to actually take those cuttings in your place. Because it'd be different for me here than it would be for someone in Northland or in Southland or wherever else. It will be very different.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you think about the process of seed sowing or doing cuttings, it's a lot of little things done right. Not perfectly. We aim for
I love
perfect,
that.
but we're not. But that is what it is all about with propagation. And let's say we did everything correctly, we would be at 100%. But from the selection of the mix to how you cut below the node, if it's a cutting, to the material that you've selected, a nice, healthy, vigorous plant, let's say, to how you've touched that, to the rooting hormone that you might have put on it, to that mix you've got, to that watering system, to the heat bed, to the light requirements, to the time of the year that you're doing it, not too late, not too soon, etc. There's probably way more. That's just a few off the top of my head. Do one of those very wrong, or wrong enough, and you'll have some failure rates. And you want to be up with our cuttings. I dare say, we're 90% above. We accept not everything lives, things die. That this is the natural world that we're part of. But with a bit of thinking and a bit of observation and a bit of mindful practice, when you're actually doing these things, you can do things as right as possible in your context. Okay.
So just to slightly change tack, because I'm being selfish with my questions now, double-skinned greenhouses. We've got one. For people who don't know, it's 2 layers of plastic that are inflated by a fan. Yes or no, in your opinion?
Depends on the system. What I guess I like the idea of moderating the temperature, and that's why I'm a fan of not having the heat fluctuations as much with a single skin. So if you can moderate the temperature, it makes it easier on the plants growing inside. So whether that's a polycarbonate or a twin layer poly inflated. I know there's some issues that people face with fans and needing electricity, but it's the moderation of temperature that I think is what you actually are trying to achieve and why those are important. Most greenhouses, people will orientate east-west, and so you'll have so it's the long side of the greenhouse is going to be facing north. So you will have a sort of a hot side and a cooler side, let's call it. But you kind of want that for the heat gain normally. That would be the standard way of doing it. In terms of moderating temperatures, there's a picture there where I've got barrels of water in the propagation house under the tables, and we had access to heaps of old non-toxic chemical barrels, 200-litre ones. Using water as a heat sink is the best way to can do it, but it takes up a lot of space. It's in Arrowtown, near Queenstown. It was easily -10 there in winter, but the lowest that propagation greenhouse ever got down to was 3.9 degrees above zero. So that's huge. And then it also buffered at the other end with a shade cloth on top. I think I only ever got up to maybe maximum 29, and that's a single skin greenhouse, maybe a little bit less than that. So that's a way, using a lot of space up, but I've got tables, and I just had to do something in that environment because it gets very hot there in summer. I think water is a more stable long-term scenario. However, it needs to warm up as well at some point. So that's what you want. In that photo, you can see those pots on the left are actually tomato seedlings. So I've put them on the warm side, and then I put an inner cover over those seedlings inside the greenhouse to try and hold an extra bit of heat and stop any descending frost. So again, manipulations, working within what you've got. It's not going to be perfect, but you only need enough to keep things alive, let's say, and not let them die, and then you can flourish in the good times.
So, Bruce, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you about greenhouses and tunnel houses and everything today. You're a mine of information. It's been a pleasure to tap that mine. And I have to say all the best to the students at the Polytech. May they learn well and prosper.
Thank you.
To stay in the loop, follow Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers on Instagram. Even with big changes coming to their website, their Insta feed is a place for behind-the-scenes looks and a sneak peek of what's blooming next. Fresh cut flower wholesalers, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. That's it for this episode, Petals. I'm Jo Robinson and I'm signing off until next time, knowing that if we work together, we'll keep the New Zealand floral industry growing and flourishing.